Hi there! I recently entered a contest hosted by my local library to design a new library card celebrating the freedom to read in my community in light of increased book bans nationwide, and I thought it could be fun to share what I came up with. So in this video, I'll be walking through my process for creating this illustration. I won't show this part, but I thought it was worth mentioning that I start almost any project in writing, specifically in lists. That's just how my brain works. So in this case, I started by writing out the different aspects of the brief, freedom to read in my particular community, and listed out some potential ways of representing both of those things. Next, I started making thumbnail sketches, which are very small and loose initial drawings that are mainly just meant to give me a general sense of what a final idea might look like. I made a lot of these, exploring different ideas before ultimately deciding on this one. I decided on this idea, which feels a little quieter and more intimate than some of my other ideas, because I wanted to show what the freedom to read actually looks like and what is really at stake when books get banned, which is people of all ages, but especially youth, accessing and enjoying books that they connect with. I wanted to show kids embodying that freedom, looking like they were genuinely and leisurely reading, content and enthralled with their books. I initially thought I would do a bold fluorescent pink for the background, but I ended up deciding on a yellow that I thought felt a little more joyful because I really wanted to capture the joy of reading in this image. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted to include the phrase free to read because I felt like it highlighted both the importance of open access to literature, but also the fact that library books are literally free to read. Because I feel like people forget how great libraries are and how much they offer to their communities. At this point, I had a general sense of what I wanted my composition to look like, so I started sketching individual characters that I wanted to include. I began in my sketchbook, but almost immediately transitioned to my iPad because I find it a little easier to refine sketches digitally. I knew I wanted to include kids of all ages, a baby, an elementary school kid, a middle schooler, and a teen. So I started with this mother and baby reading a picture book. For some figures, I had trouble finding a reference image for the exact pose I was imagining, so in this case, I had my partner take one of me. Once I had a refined sketch of these figures, I made the actual illustration with cut paper, paint, and colored pencils. I decided that they would be reading Julian is a Mermaid by Jessica Love, which is an adorable book if you haven't read it. Thinking back to the original prompt for a second, I wanted to ensure that I fulfilled both the freedom to read and the in this particular community requirements. So to that end, because the area I live in is known for its cultural diversity, I wanted to ensure that the figures I illustrated reflected that. I also nodded to my particular community with the books I featured. Every book included in my final illustration was pulled from a list of 100 frequently banned book titles that are popular in my library system, which the library shared as reference material for the contest. I did have to think about books that would still look recognizable on a small scale, so I sketched some out to get a sense of that. For my second figure, I made an elementary-aged boy reading a picture book. This one presented a unique challenge in that I knew we were going to be seeing the back of his book based on the way he was facing. So I had to think of a book that would still be recognizable from just the back cover, and I ultimately chose The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. This isn't always the best way to do things, but because I'm a collage artist, I tend to make each of my individual pieces first and then plan out my composition from there. So for this illustration, I made each figure one at a time and planned the layout as I went. Next, I made this teenage girl reading You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. And here's where it came back to haunt me a little bit that I didn't plan my entire composition in advance, because at this point I had 3 figures that I really liked, but the hole that was left in the image was such a specific shape to fill that it just presented a little bit of a compositional challenge, but I like a challenge. So I loosely sketched a couple of different poses that could fill that space before deciding on this one. And for this character, I decided to illustrate a middle school-aged boy reading Class Act by Jerry Craft. And then once I had all of my figures made, I scanned everything into Photoshop, including a yellow background that I painted, did a little bit of digital cleanup, and exported my final illustration. And while I did make this for a contest, it's the kind of project that I'd be really excited to work on in the future. So I feel like I got a portfolio piece out of it that I'm really proud of. I hope to make more videos like this, maybe including more process footage once I get my studio set up. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you in the next one. To design a new library card, share what I came up with. Excuse me. Nice. So I feel like I got a portfolio, blah, 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 blah.